on CuriosityStream. How do you connect a 16th century potato to limitless energy production? Could Napoleon's toothpick have a direct link to a machine that predicts the future? And how can a 1700s conch shell chart a course to humans connecting their brains to the internet? James Burke's visionary series Connections returns for a new generation. Experience all new Connections. With monthly, annual, and bundled plans, find the one that works for you at curiositystream.com.
So how did that happen for you? How did you meet Michael, and how far back do you go to doing this podcast?
Sure. We met online, on the Billy Joel Completely Retold Facebook page right at the end of 2019. Like I said, it was funny because he's on the West Coast, and probably around 9 o'clock his time, he put out a post saying, hey, does anybody want to do a Billy Joel podcast with me? And I happened to be up at like 1 or 2 in the morning, and I was like, yeah, let me fly this up the flagpole and see what happens. So I sent him some clips and things that I've written as a journalist, and he seemed to like it. And then we chatted on the phone New Year's Eve, like in the afternoon of 2019. Felt like it would be a good fit, and we got started a couple weeks after that.
Oh, so for those who don't know, the Billy Joel Completely Retold page is started by a guy named Mike Stutz, who's like an uber Billy Joel fan.
Yeah.
I don't know how I even stumbled into it. I think I've been on it for a couple of years. It's one of those things like on Facebook, it's like it just kind of comes to you.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. It's a lot of interesting nuggets, and Mike Stutz has a very interesting backstory. I don't know all of it, but from what I've read, it's incredibly interesting.
It is, and we spoke to him, and he'll mention little things like he picked up a lot of Billy Joel songs by ear to play on piano.
Right.
So just adding that to his whole adding that to his whole story, certainly.
Yeah, Mike is a piano player. I think he has met the piano man on a couple of occasions himself.
Yeah, and he's also a stellar archivist.
Yeah. Oh my
loads
God.
of bootlegs, interviews, articles. I think there's a couple like scholarly articles in his collection. Like anything you can think of, he's collected it over the years.
Yeah, and he's got a YouTube channel and things that I've stumbled on. He was able to stream some concerts that most of us can't get a hold of. Somehow he gets a hold of sound checks from the soundboard and actual video. I remember, I think the Philadelphia show from the Bridge tour is on there completely.
Yeah,
that was one tour that I had missed. So how did you get into, well, you're a drummer you've been for many years now. How did you get into following Billy Joel?
I grew up in Brooklyn, so Billy Joel was part of the vernacular, I'd say.
Oh yeah.
And my parents had The Stranger on cassette, and then eventually Stormfront on CD. So we're talking 87, 88, 89, right around there. And so I don't know how I heard him first, but I remember just sort of latching onto it pretty quickly. And then my cousins who lived out in Queens, pretty close to, suburban Long Island, my older cousin had a whole bunch of the records, like he had them on vinyl. So it would be like we would have a sleepover, and he would just school me on these records. Like we would stay up and we would listen to them all the way through and kind of pour over the covers and stuff. And it's what really I think shaped my appreciation of music in a way that I think is different from some other people or some of my peers, where I immediately started latching onto like more harmony, more orchestration, more like idiosyncratic structures and things like that. So when I got older, it was the Beatles, it was Jimi Hendrix and all this stuff. I actually had to go back and get into grunge because I grew up in the 90s. Like I got into Pearl Jam and Nirvana sort of later when I was ready for that. But it was young.
That's really cool, because I came up through it. I go back to about 4th or 5th grade. My sister bought the Stranger album, came home with it. Never heard or seen anything about him before, so just stumbled on it. And I was like, years later, I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know he had all these albums before The Stranger. So that took me by surprise. That's really interesting. So how did you get into drumming?
My father was a drummer for a little while, and so that was something that was just sort of known around the house. You know, he played drums in high school and a little after high school, things like that. And I made a friend in, I think, fourth grade who was starting to drum in the school band. So I kind of followed suit with him, and then drums became my thing. And then I got a set in seventh grade. And then, you know, it was kind of luck of the draw that I became a drummer, I think, as much as I enjoy it. The whole joke around the house was my grandmother would be like, your father is never allowed to tell you that you're being too loud, because he used to come home at like 1 o'clock in the morning and sit down and play for a little while.
It was passed down through the family. You were fascinated with that.
Exactly. Yeah.
How these people get into music. I mean, you know, Billy Joel is a daughter herself who's gotten into it. So you see, wow, dad's got a really cool career. I'm gonna try that and take my hand at that.
Yeah. Yeah. Funny enough, you know, I tried to get my kids into it, and my daughter took guitar for a little while. And when she was in kindergarten, she got it for her talent. No, first grade, she got it for her talent show, and actually played Eleanor Rigby on guitar. Just kind of came up, got her hands around these two chords and did the whole thing. And I'm like, she's going to do it. She's going to make it. And then she just stopped completely. And I was so self-conscious about not trying to goad her into it, you know, because I did it so much. But she turned out to get into art and graphic design. So she sort of found her path, her creative path anyway. But that was part of it.
Kids will do that. You can't really specifically, you know, get them into your interests. I mean, I tried when I was when my daughter was really young. I got her really into Beatles and stuff like that. And like with Billy, she only likes a couple of songs. I think she just wants to go opposite. And, you know, she's been into hip hop and things like that. And now she's a producer. Like, you know, I'm a video editor producer too. I work in television, and she's gotten into that now too. But yeah, I remember her only saying, I only like Piano Man. I like Longest Time. That's about like. So I went up to, and I wrote the letter to you. I went up to Boston to visit her for the second time last year and saw him at Fenway. That was his first show back from COVID. So I was like, I got to go. The timing was just perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. And you would told us.
Yeah, how was that? I was telling her, I was like, would you like to come to the show with me? She's like, no, I'll drive you to the train station. That's it.
Come on, free concert ticket. Like, you should just go.
Seriously. Yeah. I've taken her to some shows over the years. I took her to a Paul McCartney show when she was about 9.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And she saw Black Eyed Peas with me, and she was into Fergie and Black Eyed Peas and all that. I took her to those shows.
That's fun. Yeah.
So coming to the podcast, how did you come up with the name and the likeness? Obviously, it's, you know, pretty bold that it's inspired by the Glass Houses album, released now over 4 decades.
Right. Yeah. That was all Michael. This was, you know, it was his baby to begin with, and I, you know, kind of jumped onto it. The Glass Houses was it has always been his favorite album. It was also his point of entry. It was the one, I believe, somebody got for his mother, and that was the one that was in the house when he was a kid. So when he came up with the title, he went back to that.
Yeah. I remember my sister coming home with Glass Houses. She was in college. And I remember, you know, when you guys were going over the vinyl collection, because they re-released his first, 4 or 5 albums in this vinyl collection package, and pulled out Glass Houses. I'll never forget the first time I saw that. And I was like, this is so cool, in the way the lyrics were written on the sheets inside. Yeah,
in the handwriting and everything.
Yeah. When that album came out in 1980, I was in 7th grade. And I remember I was sitting next to a kid in class, and he was writing the lyrics out with these erasable pens. It had these unmistakable smells to these. Erasable pens were very new back then. He started writing the lyrics just the way. I was like, what are you doing? I don't think I heard It's Still Rock and Roll to Me just yet, at least on the radio. So he starts writing this out. He goes, oh, I love this new Billy Joel song. He's like trying to write it out like that. That's a really cool collection. I like you guys did an episode on that, and I really like how you went over the each album.
Yeah, that was fun. That was actually when we opened it too. When we made that video, we hadn't seen it yet either. So that was because Michael got his copy before I did. So he put it up on the camera. We went through it, and then, you know, as you had mentioned, we got to speak with Edward O'Dowd, who did the graphic design for it. And you know, what I had an idea that he had to recreate the covers, because we did notice 1 or 2 spots where it didn't look exactly the same, like the fonts were just slightly minusculely different. And, it was just real funny to think about, like, nobody's got the JPEG file. It's, I guess 30 years from now, they're just going to pull it off a hard drive and reprint it. But he had to go in and hand draw some of the parts and recreate the typefaces, things like that. So yeah, there was a lot of work that went into that.
Yeah, when they do these reissues, and a lot of people don't understand that. And if you listen to this episode with Edward O'Dowd, he's an old school graphic artist, but he knows a lot of the new technology too. And he's like, he developed that skill where he's like able to match things by eye and recreate an older album for re-release.
Yeah. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, you guys had a really, really, really great episode. It really opens up your eyes to how do they do these reissues and what goes into that. What I really love about your podcast is you guys talk about like, what was Billy doing at that time, and you go over his timeline. And the way I like the way you guys banter back and forth. I've been doing that for years. I was like, what was he thinking between 1980, 81 and how, why did he take this amount of time off? Was he sitting around writing? I would love to recreate that.
Yeah. Oh, we have, if we go back through, we probably have like a notebook full of questions we have for him. And like I always joke that if we ever get to speak to him, it's going to be the most inane interview, because we're going to be like, okay, September through November, 1987. What were you doing?
I could see him saying, because he tries so much to act like a regular guy.
Yeah.
He said, well, you guys know more about me than I do.
Yeah, right. I'm waiting to get it. He's going to call me one day. He's like, oh, you think that's what I was doing, huh? You think that's what I meant? Yeah, it's been real fun from a real perspective of craft. Just to dig into Billy, because I love Billy Joel, but you could almost do this with anyone, where there's just so much that goes into the making of these albums that you'll never see in a documentary. You won't even read about in a book usually, that we get to uncover because we just have so much time. We have all the time in the world and we kind of use it.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, somebody who would look at that and say, well, you're doing a podcast and a guy who hasn't recorded any new pop music in over 3 decades. So like, you guys are going to exhaust yourself. And no, not at all. There's so many people connected to the Billy world.
Right.
You can go on for a number of years with this if you really want to.
Yeah, well, that's the plan, hopefully. Yeah, one of the things we do is we do album reviews, and we hold ourselves to only doing 2 a year, so we don't run out. So we have 6 years worth of album reviews, and then I don't know what we're going to do if we're going to double back, if we're still doing this half a decade in. But yeah, we're kind of set for longevity, hopefully.
Yeah, sure. I mean, absolutely. And, with the Billy camp, and you went over this with Edward, they're always taking a fresh approach to things that have already existed. So you're always recreating things that are out there. You could do, a 45th anniversary of an album, a 50th anniversary album. They might be able to find some scraps on the floor and repackage that. So there's always, it's, with an artist like this, it's always the gift that keeps on giving.
Right.
Kind of like a stock.
Yeah, it really is. And, we just listened to, I think it was 88.
PMS, pregnancy, menopause. Each stage of womanhood has its unique challenges. That's why Highlands Naturals' new women's multivitamins are formulated with daily essential nutrients, plus targeted support for your life stage. PMS, Highlands has a multi for that. Pregnant and having morning sickness? That too. In the throes of menopause, we've got you covered. No matter what phase of life you're in, Highlands Naturals is here for it. Find your multi on Amazon or at highlands.com.
For the best TV viewing experience, witness the coziest maroons, the most vibrant and brightest moons, the eeriest and darkest tombs, and radiant and vivid hues in any type of room with the Neo QLED and OLED TVs by Samsung. We're supposed to say Samsung, but that didn't rhyme, so you're welcome. Samsung, more wow than ever.
He played this kind of one-off thing in Japan. It was his only show for the year. And so the episode hasn't come out yet, but we listened to that. And it was funny, just for as many times as we've heard these, even listening to Miami 2017 for the millionth time and probably the 12th or 13th live version, you're like, wow, so that's how that lineup did it. That's how the synths in 1988 were more prominent, and this worked and this didn't. You know, even as locked in as his arrangements are, there's something interesting to find with every live release, bootleg or otherwise.
That's interesting. He did a show in 1988 because that was like a year he was not really out there doing anything.
Yeah, we uncovered this in such the most roundabout way. We came across it when we were doing our episode on 1988 and talking about how little he was doing. And it was called the Kieran Dry Gigs in Japan. We're like, what in the world is this? We did all this research. What we found out was all this research, you know, we Googled it a whole bunch. But what we found out was there was they were opening, I think, like a new stadium or arena in Japan. And Kieran Dry was the name of a liquor company that was sponsoring it. So it became known as the Kieran Dry Gig. And it was like a full, like 1 or 2 days worth of music. Like I believe the Hooters were there and a couple other people. So that was Billy's only show. He went with a hybrid band, which was like Liberty DeVito on drums, Skylar Deal, who at the time was playing bass leading up to Stormfront. And then he actually had Eric Bazillion from the Hooters sitting in on saxophone and a couple other people. Yeah, so it was this weird one-off thing. And then 2-3 weeks ago, it popped up on YouTube. Somebody, it wasn't Mike Stutz, it was someone else, just found the audio, put the whole concert up, and we listened to it and went through it. And yeah, that's just one example of these little curios that still come out today.
That's really cool. I didn't even know that. It was like only thing that was released like that year was he had a song in Oliver and Company.
Right. Why should I worry? Yeah.
Yeah, that's about it. I was kind of wondering what he was doing that year. I remember they did come out with a documentary about Russia, and I think it was released in the summer of '88 because I was doing an internship that year at the CBS affiliate in Cleveland. And I think I remember him coming on CBS This Morning or whatever their show was called at the time.
Yeah.
And he was promoting that. I thought HBO had released like an original documentary at that time, or ABC maybe. Right. But that was all I saw that was going on that year. And then the following year I had moved to Atlanta, and then that's when Stormfront came out. And
yeah.
That I was like really surprised with, as many of us probably were at that time.
Well, I'd love to hear about that, because that was like my first album. That was the one I remember when it came out. And so I had that and The Stranger, and I was 8 years old. So I didn't have this concept of, wow, this one sounds very 80s and this one sounds very 70s. So tell me, yeah. So by then you had heard a bunch of the albums. What was your reaction when you heard Stormfront? Like, was it immediately very
obviously
different?
the lead-off single, I was like, has he jumped the shark here? It's like, what is going on? He's just listing a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Is this just being really lazy? I mean, that's what I thought at first. And I was like, oh my, it's just catchy. It's catchy. It's like, it's just like on and on and on and on. And the radio stations were playing it. Obviously shot up to #1. It was, competing with the big hair bands at that time.
Yeah.
And he just, that showed his skills as a pop artist to write something incredibly catchy that he created an earworm and did amazing on it. Finally got the album basically almost the day it was released. As you know, I've told you I work at CNN, and I started around that time in August of '89. And so I think this was released around October of '89. And we had a record store at CNN Center, which is a big complex. If you don't know where it's broadcast out of the headquarters, it's a huge building. It has a massive atrium. And there was a record store called Turtles. And went in there, got the CD immediately. And then I noticed on the back, I was like, different producer. What's he doing here? This Rolling Stone's going to kill him. It's like, what is, and, just took it home and was just floored. I was like, I love the opening track. It was about Christy and all that. And just the standout track to me, I love Shameless. That was really like, just really smooth and catchy, and I really, really enjoyed that one. He later says When in Rome is a stinker, but I loved all of it. It reminded me of like the house band on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
I was like, this is a really fun track, and just really, I really enjoyed just the entire album. We just played it through a few times, and I was like, he goes on tour, I'm there. And sure enough, by July of 1990, he came to Atlanta. He did 2 dates in July, around July 4th. And I don't know if you know, Liberty mentions visiting here on that tour on those dates. If you read Liberty DeVito's book,
I did, yeah, yeah.
and he mentioned that.
Right.
He played 2 nights at the Omni, which was attached to, well, not really attached. At that time, it was across away from CNN Center.
Mhm.
So, I mean, the concerts were all there if I wanted to go see them. I saw Paul McCartney earlier that year.
Nice.
It was right there. I was like, God, I mean, it's great working in this building. I could go right and see concerts. It's just really awesome.
Yeah.
So, another big track I loved, And So It Goes. And I as you probably read Phil Ramone's book about the origins of that song, that Billy was kicking that around for a couple of years.
Right. Yeah. Could you imagine that on An Innocent Man with all those bouncy songs and then just throwing on this somber solo piano ballad?
Exactly. Yeah. It's just like, oh, but it doesn't fit with the theme of the album either. That becomes a throwaway B-side, which Billy has very few of.
Exactly.
I don't know how many, but it's not that many.
No, I could think of maybe 3 or 4 offhand. That's about it.
Yeah. And I was surprised with House of Blue Lights. I had gotten the cassette single to We Didn't Start the Fire.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I was like, wow, yeah, he's got a unreleased B-side. And I later learned about Elvis Presley Boulevard from the Nylon Curtain era.
Yeah. I remember when I was in college, and this it had to be like 99, 2000, the local eatery or whatever had a jukebox, so we're looking in there, and at this point, like, it's me and one other kid that like Billy Joel, and like we're all in college. It's the worst thing you could possibly talk about, and so they had We Didn't Start the Fire on 45, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to put this on. And then I see this House of Blue Lights. I'm like, what in the good? Got some quarters through it. I'm like, everybody shut up. I have to hear this. Like, we didn't have, you couldn't go on YouTube yet and find it. Like, everybody had to be quiet. I'm standing near the jukebox trying to listen to this scratchy, like Diner 45.
And then years later, he brought that out at Madison Square and actually performed that, which really took me by surprise. Somebody
Did he really? I missed that. Wow.
I think that's out there on YouTube somewhere. Somebody, maybe in Mike Stutz's group there. somebody
I'm sure he's got,
yeah.
Yeah. Those are so interesting. Because we see all the set lists now. And and what a really brilliant way to stay in the conversation, because if I'm in like a couple other like classic rock groups, notably Jethro Tull and Genesis, and you see all the activity when they go on tour. Like the Genesis tour has been huge, so like the ramp up has been people speculating on the set lists, and then ramp it back down, people post everything. And for Jethro Tull, if Ian Anderson and Martin Barr go on tour, you see those ebbs and flows of current activity. But with Billy, it's like, it's just perpetual. It's everybody guesses on the next set list. Everybody posts the next set list. 3 weeks later, it all happens again.
No, I feel like, oh my God, we're a bunch of geeks. I mean, the guy doesn't really change up the set list all that much. It's like, so I go to see him in Boston, and I haven't seen him that much over the years. My first time I've seen him, now it's going on 38 years. I saw him in one of my first big arena shows when I was in high school. I made my mom get the tickets. Seats were not that great. Innocent Man tour. So I haven't seen him, but spaced out enough over the years where I've seen him at different stages. But obviously in the last 15 years, I mean, the set list has been pretty much the same, but he'll change out maybe 4 songs, something like that.
Yeah. He doesn't even he used to do the audience vote between Vienna and Summer Island. He just gave up on that, it seems like, too.
Fielder's Choice. He was doing that on the face-to-face shows. I remember he was doing that. So so I'm at Fenway and I'm so excited. He's like, he's going to do a Room of Our Own. He's like, this might be a stinker. You might want to go take a leak. I'm like probably the only one in the section who's like excited about this.
Yeah. There's like one person in each section that just grips the chair in front of him, like, he's going to do it.
That's a serious fan, but I don't really have like a massive collection. Sounds like you guys have a few copies of almost every album.
Michael does. He's much more of a collector. He's got every single, because we do Zoom when we do the podcast just so we can see each other. And it's like show and tell with him, man. It's great. He just starts taking them. I'm like, all right, you got me beat,
I love the still you have. I have your website up. It's called glasshousespod.com. And there's a picture of, the still from your vinyl collection, volume 1 episode.
And he's in front of the Library of Congress back there with 5 copies of everything you can think of.
Hope he has all of this insured. I hate having so much junk in my house. I'm like, I have to insure all this stuff. I'm too attached to it.
Right. I never thought of that. Now you got me paranoid. I'm gonna have to put that. Let's see if water's coming in the basement now. Shoot.
Exactly. There's fire. There's water. There's tornadoes that come our way. Jeez.
Yeah. It's such a funny thing because everything is digital, and even if you don't like Spotify or YouTube, as far as even just for the bit rates, you can get into the FLAC files and this and that, but it is amazing how so many of us, even the younger generation, has gone back to wanting physical media, despite how impractical it is. I mean, I get records and I have to sit there and scrub them and do this and that, and make you don't even want the needle to go down automatically. You don't want to just hit the button. You still have to like guide it down, gently birth the experience. And it's like, if you try to explain this to an alien, they'd be like, you're out of your mind. Like just hit play on the computer. It comes through your nice speakers. I don't see what the problem is. Like, no. This is how it must be.
Yeah, I knew back in the day a lot of audiophiles who I grew up with. The guy next door had a wonderful sound system, and he had Eagles Hotel California. It's like using like gloves to put it on the turntable, and like it's pristine. But there is, if you're really good at listening to audio, which I'm sure Michael and yourself are, it's like you really do hear the difference, the ambience, and the way it was really supposed to be to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
Probably most of Billy's catalog is recorded analog, maybe except for Nylon Curtain and Songs in the Attic.
Well, actually, I think no songs. I don't know if the rest of them are, but I believe that Songs in the Attic was possibly the first digital recording commercially released.
Yeah,
when they put it to zeros and ones and not analog audio.
Yeah. And then, and then it was interesting because I noticed that on Stormfront, he went back to analog. I was like, there's a reason for that.
Yeah, I'll have to look at that. And that's a great point. I didn't even realize that. I just assumed it was digital at that point, but that's wow. So that makes me excited for any Stormfront releases on vinyl now that might come out. Or if I can actually finally hunt down, I know Michael has it, but if I can hunt down an original copy, really am now interested to hear that, because I heard it on CD for years and years. That's how we had it in the house.
Right. It was like the producers thinking that Mick Jones was it?
From Firneno.
Probably just like, no, we're going analog. We're going with more warm sound. We're gonna do it the old-fashioned, the old school way. I would think. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you read Phil Ramone's book too, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Which is what a fantastic
Making
book.
Records.
But he what's great is he talks a little about very, very calmly in his book. Does he talk about, it was difficult and you'd have to call somebody in, they'd have to like troubleshoot this brand new equipment during a session that nobody really knew about while keeping it going. Meanwhile, if you talk to his engineers, he would just turn around and be like, fix it. Like, I'm going outside. This better be done when I get back in here. And they'd be like, yeah, great. Let me just pull out the manual to this brand new technology that nobody understands yet. And they had to do it on the fly, which is amazing because Songs in the Attic.
Shop the Plato's Closet Black Friday event in North Charleston and West Ashley and let the deals begin. Plato's Closet always has a huge selection of trendy recycled styles at amazing prices, but Black Friday deals are different. They're better. We've been holding back some of our best inventory, and you won't want to miss our Black Friday event. Save on gently used styles from Patagonia, Lululemon, Lilly Pulitzer, and hundreds of popular brands. Plato's Closet is ready to let the Black Friday deals begin. Plato's Closet, located in West Ashley on Sam Rittenberg Boulevard and North Charleston on Rivers Avenue.
Okay, round 2. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right. ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
As you know, it was a live album. So they had the mobile trucks behind an arena or behind like a nightclub in Long Island. And they have to capture this audio. Like, that's nerve-wracking. I spent 15 minutes setting up for this Zoom call, and I do this like 2 to 3 times a week.
It's so true. It shows how much things have evolved, and things are just more portable, smaller now than it has been. So that way, I've been in TV now 33, 34 years now.
Right.
So I remember big clunky cameras. It's the same kind of thing. I mean, the equipment was just big, analog, and wow, it's changed.
Right. And I guess you guys would, go right to videotape. I'm assuming like you wouldn't be working with film.
Oh no, I miss film. I wasn't old enough for that.
Right.
So way back in the news days, they would shoot, I believe, on 16 millimeter.
Okay.
And they would do packages. That's why they would always say film at 11, because they had to run in, get it developed, and then they would hot splice and use all that. I did that as a Super 8 filmmaker growing up. If you look at my YouTube channels, I have a lot of my old Super 8s cataloged on there. Some I use some Billy music on. But in probably around the mid 70s, they started using videotape a lot more. It was a big clunky videotape called 3/4 inch.
Okay.
And that's when they had like a huge, I mean, these people's shoulders would go out after a while, the camera person.
Yeah.
So used that for a long time. And then probably by the late 80s, 3/4 inch was starting to get phased out, and they started using Betacam, which is the same technology as Betamax, which was phased out, and VHS won over in the home market. But Betacam was very durable. So was Betamax. Durable, better quality, but Betacam really, from probably around 87, 88 and on, was the standard. And then probably around early 2000s, we started going more and more digital. So things are now shot straight on digital onto cards, and tape got phased out. It's all in libraries now.
Yeah, it's so, when I went to college, I started in '99. I always kind of tell this story, especially to anybody that came up post iPhone. So I went for film, possibly the worst time in history as far as I'm concerned, because you didn't get to touch celluloid until like your second or third year. Right? Wow. Everything was video or something before that. So then you had to buy, remember the jazz discs, like these $100. They were this big. They were zip discs on steroids. You get 1 gigabyte of memory on this thing, which was mind blowing. Yeah. And you had like 4 editing stations with Adobe on it that would crash if you looked at it wrong, and you would line up at 6 a.m. outside because nobody had a computer with the firepower to run this, and you would go at it for 3 hours, and you'd go to hit save, and the whole thing would freeze up, and you'd go home crying. I did, at least, because all your work was gone, and this and that. And I got out of it. I went to journalism. I'll never forget 2011, 2012. My kids are like, Daddy, can we see your phone? I'm like, yeah, sure. So they go and they make it a movie, and they're recording it, and they're editing on my cell phone. And I never had the best ones either. I'm like, they have more firepower on this phone than I had at this horrible gray area of the film industry when I was trying to learn it in college.
Oh, that's so true. They're so spoiled now, because like when I was doing Super 8s as a kid, each reel was about 50 meters long, something like that. You get 3 minutes out of it. For us, it was like $10 a pop. It was really, really ridiculous. So you had to really conserve. It would discipline you to, stay within those 3.5 minutes.
Yeah.
But now,
yeah, it's not. I mean, well, my son's in his room over here in case you hear any caterwauling going on. He's got into, like, he streams his video games. He does Smash Brothers or whatever. Like, I bought a capture card, and he did that thing I used to do where they kind of come sniffing around at your gadgets. I'm like, what do you got over there? Like, and then it ends up in their room and they're doing it. He homebrewed his Switch, which just fascinated me. Somebody gave him an Xbox. He didn't want the Xbox. He traded the Xbox for a second Nintendo Switch took his old one and hacked it. So he puts like Legend of Zelda characters into Mario games and stuff. And I'm like, I don't even have a clue as to what you're up to over there. But if I try to like take a screwdriver to my NES in '88, my parents would have killed me.
Oh, it's so true. It's so true. My daughter and her boyfriend are into the Switch. When I visit them in Boston, it's like I'm always on their Switch. They do all kinds of stuff on there. That makes you feel really old. It's like, yeah, just really, really incredible. So, what was your first Billy Joel concert?
River of Dreams tour at Nassau Coliseum. We all went. It was myself, my parents, and my cousins that got me into it, and my aunt and uncle. And this was it's so funny. It's like, wow, I guess I could tell this now. It was a funny thing because my aunt got me the ticket for Christmas, and none of the other cousins got something like that. So I was told early, like, don't make a big deal, and Annie's going to take you aside, and you're going to get your present. If don't talk about it. Like, oh man, I'm going to see. Oh, I know it. So we caravanned out there, and we were like in the nosebleeds of Nassau Coliseum. And it was just, it was amazing. We were all the way in the back, but we had binoculars and everything. We were singing along. My cousins were next to me. We all grew up, listening to just pouring over this stuff. I so vividly remember people dancing in the aisles. And thinking to myself, wow, so the second half of his concert is just like a house party, because he always has that ramp up at the end where it's just banger after banger after banger.
Right.
And I remember just people up in the aisles dancing and everything else. My father at the time had just retired as a police officer, and somebody, comes into play. This guy sits behind us because we're in the back, lights up this huge joint. None of us knew what was happening. Except my oldest cousin, who's going like this, like trying to get secondhand. My mother's freaking out. She's like, "What are you guys doing? Go sit, watch the concert. Don't even breathe. Look at it that way." And then my father has to turn around, take out his old badge, and he's like, "Guy, come on, dude, go somewhere else, would you?"
Except the bed, that will scare them.
Yeah.
Reminds me when the first show that I saw, and I was telling Liberty this. Liberty was my second guest on my podcast.
Oh, cool.
And I was at that show, and like when My Life was always the second song.
Yeah.
I'm starting to smell something. And I'm like, you're getting high to My Life, really?
Yeah, that's your trigger. Like
I was like, I could see Pink Floyd. I could see really like at a Billy Joel show. Really?
Yeah,
Is this enhancing the experience? It's like this is radio pop music. I don't know how much you're going to get off of that.
Yeah, I guess any vibrancy is good vibrancy at that point,
Exactly. But yeah, that's in his lineup it was called From Piano Man to an Innocent Man tour. And I think the one that's always online that you see is maybe the one that was recorded in London.
Oh, the Wembley one, yeah.
Where he didn't do that for us because he had Toots Thielman on. Did Leave a Tender Moment Alone. I don't know if he's ever done it live ever since.
Right.
But yeah, that's a good one. That's up on YouTube.
Yeah, that's a fun one. I'm trying to think. Is it? Yeah, it's so funny. CW Post is considered the high watermark for Billy Joel bootlegs. That one's just. Have you heard that one?
No.
It's like 76. It's between Turnstiles and The Stranger, and if you put it in sequence, it's just before the Carnegie Hall concert where he meets Phil Ramone. And what's interesting is, and we're talking by a couple weeks this happened. So Carnegie Hall, it's a great show, but you can tell they streamlined it a little. They knew they were recording, that sort of thing. CW Post was a radio broadcast that people recorded off the radio in Long Island at a college. And they are just, first of all, everything's 20 BPM too fast. And you could tell they're just challenging each other.
Sure.
They rip to shreds some of these arrangements. Piano Man, it's because it's so funny. Like Piano Man's like sacrosanct at a Billy Joel concert.
Oh, sure.
At the end, they're going to do it almost note for note. They were throwing like funk rhythms behind it. Liberty's doing whatever he feels like. They were making fun of New York State of Mind. They were putting these weird hits everywhere. Like it was so fun to hear. Zero reverence for what became the standards. At one point,
really cool.
Richie's playing this. Yeah, at one point, Richie's playing this like crazy Moog synth line over "She's Got Away" for no reason whatsoever. It's like this tender ballad, and it sounds like the end of like "Lucky Man" by ELP going on.
Oh, wow.
On top of it.
That's so interesting. It reminds me of Carnegie Hall. So I met Jeff Schock backstage. I told you a little bit about that story.
Yeah.
I did a package for what was then CNN Airport Network, and I think we also streamed it to the .com page because I think I told I was interviewing Mike Del Judas, his whole story. So I did a package on him. So I didn't expect that I was going to be backstage and for that long.
Right.
But we shared a room where I shot my interview with Mike. We shared the room with Jeff Schock. And I had no idea who he was even at that moment. And just like he sat down with us, the nicest guy, like what Edward O'Dowd was talking about, just like the nicest guy, just wants to hear your story. You could really speak with him. And he was just incredibly down to earth.
Yeah.
And we were I said, I bet Billy has just like this amazing sound system at home. I bet if, it's probably like crisp, clear records. Like, you'd be surprised. Not really. We were talking about Carnegie Hall. I said, I hear some of it on the Stranger re-release set there, but is the whole thing going to be released on its own? He's like, oh yeah, I promise it's going to happen. And sure enough, like way after Jeff passed, I think it was released as its own vinyl. Yeah,
it was I think that was Record Store Day. I want to say 2018 or 2019 that came out. It was funny when we talked to Richie Kanata, he said he didn't even know that recording existed until it came out. A lot of these things just get stuck. Just like one of my favorite live albums recently has been like Benny Goodman's 1938 Carnegie Hall concert, which is like sort of, classic in big band and jazz. And, so the story goes, he plays this like kind of landmark concert in 38, one of the first times people sat down to listen to swing music. At that point it was just dance. So I guess it'd be the equivalent of like Calvin Harris playing, Carnegie Hall and expecting people to sit with their hands in their lap for it. But somebody made an acetate recording of it, gave it to him, and it sits in his apartment until like 1950. So like 12 years later, he finds the records and then goes ahead and publishes this landmark jazz album, that was sitting behind his couch for a decade and change.
Oh, that's really a fascinating story. Yeah. You don't know. It's like this real treasure. It's just like all of a sudden it just pops up and it's like, I didn't expect that at all.
Right. Yeah.
Amazing. So River of Dreams, what else do you remember from that show?
I remember, so I've seen him 2 other times, both times with Elton John. So I don't have the best gauge, but I will say that my instinct and my impression was he chatted so much more with the audience and so much more casually because it was a hometown show. Like he picks up the accordion for Down Easter Alexa and is just like, and he starts like pretending he's like, an Italian monkey grinder kind of thing. He's like, I don't know how to play this effing thing, this and that. We're all laughing, having a good time. He gets the weed and start the fire and he's like, let's see if I can actually remember the words to all of this, and me and my cousins are up there shouting. I'm like, we're going to help him out, from the nosebleeds, you can look up at us. I remember you could see Liberty. Liberty, of course, is the only one you can really get a sense of without binoculars that far away, just, all the gesticulation. And when he introduced Liberty, somebody in front of us said, yep, Lib's been with him the longest. Like,
yeah,
that was my first clue that like people really knew who Liberty DeVito was. And he had, when he did Pressure, he ran around the stage. He would run between the 2 keyboards.
Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
I have a vague memory of him running between them during the song, but he may have just run up at the beginning or the end of the song. But I remember that, he went to play to the people behind the stage kind of thing.
Yeah, I miss him running around that stage.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
He's, he's not ancient, but in the rock and roll world, yeah, he's royalty. And it
Yeah,
doesn't move around like he used to. I do miss that, but
yeah,
we all have to age at some
right.
point. But not like
Yeah, I mean, thank God it wasn't so integral to the show that you're like, oh, I miss it. Like it just
right.
doesn't seem the same. I feel like if you saw Kiss with no makeup at in a theater with no pyrotechnics, you'd be like,
he's moving a little bit more than Phil Collins is these days.
And it was so funny because I watched like just some clips of him doing like Susudio, I would say in the 90s, and he's just literally jogging around a circular stage.
Yeah.
Like that was his thing. He'd be like, hey, and now he's in, I mean, people said he sounded great, so thank God for that. But yeah, just seeing those pictures was jarring. Did you see the video? I'm sorry, go on.
Well, voice wise, he didn't, the closest he came here on this tour with Genesis was over in Charlotte. They didn't come here to Atlanta. So I don't know if they even came out west. I know they did a lot of more Eastern. They played in Cleveland, Ohio, Detroit. I think they even went to Columbus, but I don't know if Genesis had any interest in going to a lot of other places. But,
yeah, they came to Philly. I was playing that night, so that was off the table. But well, I mean, the thing about Genesis and Billy Joel to a point is, it's exciting, to see some of these really good tribute bands come up. Like when Genesis came through, to be honest, I'm kind of a big Genesis fan, but I like so much of their older stuff. We have a great tribute called the Genesis Show that plays, right in my backyard. Okay. And I've seen them, and they've done Supper's Ready, and they'll do, a whole 20-minute epic. They replicated the show from like RFK Stadium in Philadelphia from like 1982. Like they got the set list, they got the recording, they have 2 drum sets, and it's like, I kind of want to see this. I kind of want to see guys, like really just knock these things out like they did 40 years ago instead of cramming the hits in, and what a great show they put on. I see the Lords of 52nd Street, Billy Joel's, classic touring band when they come through. And I remember being so excited because I'm like, this is even the furthest you'll get at like Havana's, club in New Hope near me is probably 5th row when you add in the galley between the first row, and then the fenced off area and the stage. You're as close as you're ever going to be. And you'll hear Until the Night. You'll hear Rosalinda's Eyes. They're going to play all the deep cuts because that's what you're there for. And it's great to hear. Great to hear still. I mean, Billy does a great job, and Genesis apparently did too. But to hear all the fan favorites and the deep cuts played with like vitality, it's exciting.
Yeah. So you've seen the Lords live?
Yeah, I've seen them twice now.
Oh,
it's cool. A great show.
I see the set list. Everybody's putting those online. I'm like, that's so great. And you do have 3, members from that band, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
Do they still have the piano man looking like Billy? Is that who is?
Oh, David Clark. No, for this tour they got a young guy now, and I think he comes from the theater world, if I remember correctly. And he was really good. I mean, obviously it's such a funny thing because the songs are all focused on the piano, but we're all focused on the rhythm section. Is essentially what's happening,
Oh,
so he definitely he holds it down great, and you really you understand how much Richie Cannata really contributed, because you think of him just playing the saxophone, but you watch those old videos, he's playing organ, he's playing some piano, and he does a lot of that with the Lords too, especially.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's so cool. I mean, it's not just like a regular old tribute band. I mean, this is the real deal. So I wish they would travel a lot more. They can come down my way, but
let Andy know.
Yeah, that's so cool. So the face-to-face shows, I remember that. I was like, I'll never see these, and I didn't think I would ever see Elton John and Billy Joel together. I always thought they were kind of rivals and it would never happen.
Yeah.
And then it did, and I was just like, I saw them here at the Georgia Dome, and then years later when I met Dave Rosenthal, he told me that they did the rehearsals here in the early 90s at what was then the Georgia Dome. So they were here. Elton has had a place here for many years.
Oh, really?
So they all have fond memories of rehearsing for their very first face-to-face tour. And that was the first time I heard of Fielder's Choice.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, so you've seen him on the face to face as well, then?
Yeah, yeah, 94.
Right. What did you think of that show in comparison to just a straight Billy show?
Um, wasn't so much for me. I felt it was kind of like sloppy in a way.
Really?
The venue, the Georgia Dome, was terrible for acoustics.
Hmm.
They since tore it down, and there's a place called Mercedes-Benz Stadium where they've already held a Super Bowl there, which I've heard is far better. I'm going to see Elton later this year at that venue. I've seen Elton probably about 5-6 times, and I've seen, at that time I saw Billy half a dozen times.
Yeah.
It was enjoyable and everything. I thought maybe it was just kind of getting Vegasy and schlocky with them covering each other's songs. It was interesting.
Yeah.
Not exactly the cup of tea that I did want to see them again. They came back a few times, but in 2010 I came close to wanting to go to that show, but I missed that.
Right. Yeah. 2009, I saw him in Philly, and my impression, because we saw him at Citizens Bank, which is the ball field, so it's open air, and you really got that. What I love about stadium shows like that is when you feel the sun go down when you're there, and the lights, that mix of the transition of artificial versus natural light. And Elton goes first, and I remember he was just like, to my recollection, he was just kind of almost going through the motions, like just knowing that this is Billy's town. He just sat. He played a lot of longer mellow. I remember he did Rocket Man. He did Tiny Dancer, so I was happy I heard that. And I feel like he didn't really ramp it up. And then when it was Billy's turn, Billy was dancing on the piano and doing everything. So he was a little more amped for it.
Yeah. And so some nuggets of that showed up on the My Lives box set, which Billy isn't so proud of, but it's like, it's a bunch of scraps they threw together, but there's some live cuts from that wound up on there.
Yeah, My Lives is such an odd box set. I actually don't have it. I didn't, by the time I thought about maybe shelling out the money, I felt like everything that I want to hear is online. Like, I love hearing old demos and stuff like that, but I can find them now. Like, I don't need like this weird mix of demos, live cuts, and then a couple of like studio tracks. Like I have, it was an odd box for sure.
It really totally is. I mean, the packaging's interesting. I do enjoy that. And then they threw the River of Dreams concert. I think it was from Germany that they included on there.
Yeah.
And there's a really great performance of Crystal Taliaferro on there with Billy, and it's just really good. I think it's Innocent Man.
Mm-hmm.
And just incredible. She just totally kills it, as you always know.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's first time you saw her was on Stormfront.
All right. Yeah. And it's funny when you watch something like Last Play at Shea, you realize that she became sort of she took up Liberty's place as sort of like a visual focal point, when they would start putting her behind Billy. So like, even though he's sitting down, there's somebody with a lot of energy and a lot of movement, happening, in that same eye line, that kind of thing. She fascinates me. We're trying to get her on, and I think I'm going to bore her with a million tiny, minuscule technical questions, because I remember watching we had the videos when I was a kid. My aunt actually had the double VCR, so she made us the copies of it.
Cool.
And you start watching these and you realize, okay, she's playing percussion, now she's playing guitar, and then now she's playing harmonica and saxophone, and she's singing, and it's just like, people that are like utility players like that fascinate me so much, that I would just love to learn more about what's your daily practice schedule like? Do you do like, are you like, is it like leg day or arm day? Is it saxophone day and then guitar day, or is it a mix? Do you just go in phases? That's sort of, we have so many specialties.
So true. You name it, she does it. And that's just incredible. She makes it look very easy.
Oh yeah. And so fun too.
Yeah. I really wonder what that regimen is, though. Does she really practice a lot? I really wonder about that. If I ever get her on this one, I'll tell you what, I'll talk to her more about John Mellencamp and Springsteen. And you guys,
we'll have to coordinate this. Yeah, it'll be like a comic book crossover.
I've met her a couple of times. And at the shows backstage, and she's really, really cool. Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I don't know how much she wants to really talk. I don't know if she's much of a talker and wants to give interviews so much, but I'd love to speak with her too. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm very interested. I saw her on that Springsteen tour,
Mhm.
and she had a big role in that show. I mean, she did sax on Born to Run. I mean, it's just like,
That's
whoa,
creepy still,
that's a lot
yeah.
of pressure.
Right, right. Yeah, that's something,
Um,
yeah, I kind of overlooked that. You knew she was with Springsteen, but yeah, you had to step into like such an iconic role there. Yeah. Yeah.
it really was. I mean, she was like really front and center. He didn't have the E Street Band.
Mhm.
Obviously, the diehards were not used to that and was probably
Right.
criticizing it and everything. But oh my, yeah, you could see online, the clips and everything. She's phenomenal as
Yeah.
always.
Yeah. No, I want to go back and watch that now. I don't think if I've seen those, I haven't paid too much attention to them yet, but yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out today and get a good feel for that.
Yeah, I hope we all get to speak with her because she's got and it's been some time now and they've been coming back and doing the shows here post COVID and
Mhm.
everything. And I'm just very interested to see how the band is even doing. I haven't seen them when I was there in Boston. I mean, they were really on lockdown. It was really strict COVID protocols. They
Yeah.
didn't want the band to mingle with anybody off stage into the
Mhm.
audience. So,
Oh
but
wow.
hopefully that changes.
Yeah, I guess it's going to lean out. Well, Andy Shoshone wasn't at that show. Mike Del Giudice had to play bass. And then I didn't get the whole story, but I know Mike missed one of the garden shows. I think December, he wasn't there for that one. And I don't know the reason. It might have been the same, but I'm not going to speculate, but
Yeah, I think it was health issues, and I think it was even beyond COVID. I know he had gotten it. I don't know if he was really symptomatic, but I think he had some other stuff going on with maybe his wife, or he had some other issues too with
right.
health. So that's he missed that show. But yeah, I was like in Boston. I was like, "Where is Andy? Wait a minute!" It like kind of hit me like well into the show. I was like, What happened here?"
Yeah, yeah. We happened to speak to Mike right after that, and he was I'm trying to remember exactly what he said, but it was some of the effect of he was out in Pennsylvania doing a private show, and he just like ran into a Guitar Center or something, like I think either bought a bass or borrowed one and was just sitting in the car like running through everything to see.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'd be really interesting. Billy's interesting. He's quite elusive. But he's very, very down to earth. So I saw him backstage. I was like, I'm not approaching. I'm just like, it was like that kind of moment. It was like he just didn't look like he wanted to be bothered. So, I was there. I wasn't even expecting to see him back there. It was like I just looked up and there he was.
Right, right.
This is really weird. It's such an iconic look, and
Yeah.
to him, it's no big deal.
Right. Yeah, it's such a, it's funny if you ever happen to see someone like that. Well, I'm sure you have, when they're talking to someone they know, if you happen to see them from afar. Like that's the moments when you really like it just drives home like they're just a person too. When they're just either talking some quick business or catching up with someone, and you see that how off they are, or not thinking about a spotlight being on them, and yeah, you're never gonna go up and like and interrupt that moment. You're like, hey, like.
Lucky Land Casino asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office. More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Exactly.
Turn it on, smiling, sign something for me. Yeah.
It has to be really that right moment. And he's got a great crew, and I don't want to bother any crew members or anything like that. I could tell they're really family back there. It's just, it's a well-oiled machine,
Yeah.
the way they get these shows on. And I think he really likes hanging out with the more physical guys who put the stage together. That's the impression I got, because I was heading to the stage. They let me shoot Mike on stage for about, I was only allowed for the first two songs. That's usually how it is when you are covering a concert. So they allowed me to go side stage to get a few shots of him for my feature. And I was heading to the stage, and I noticed Billy was like standing with people who like seemed to be real techies or stuff like that. And he just seemed to be like really in the moment. He stands a lot before the show, because he sits so much through the show.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. It's
Go ahead.
interesting to hear what a well-oiled machine it was. You know, I'm sure you've been backstage at a whole bunch of shows. How does it compare to like maybe some other acts you've seen come through? Is it like a really different dynamic back there, or is it you just kind of notice it's a little smoother?
Yeah, it's smoother. They seem to be really like their family. They're very comfortable with one another. You could just kind of tell that they have been doing it for many, many years. I think he's very loyal to a lot of people. It seemed like a lot of guys who were like from Long Island from long ago, these older guys who were around his age. In fact, one came up to me and wanted to double check my backstage pass, protecting Billy, of course.
Right.
So I could tell these guys have been around a while. And when I've seen other bands and stuff like that, it's not quite that atmosphere. It's kind of a whole different vibe.
More moving components sort of thing. Well, that's what we've sort of keyed into, is that, someone like Brian Ruggles has been with them so long that they end up with a lot of, Billy ends up with a lot of cutting edge technology over the years, because he had a crew that was comfortable with him for so long that they could experiment. These weren't guys that were like, well, this is my first tour with this band, I better make it good or I'll never get a new one. You get the impression those guys aren't going to rock the boat and try to come up to the artist and be like, hey man, I want to try this new thing. We have this new technology. Like the Bridge tour, we found out they put the monitors under the stage.
Yeah.
And it came up through vents.
Oh, wow.
The sound. And, the band was a little apprehensive, but not much, because they were so familiar with the crew. They had that trust. And from years and years of working with them, they're like, well, I don't know, but if you guys say it's going to work, I guess it's going to work. Just little things like that.
Yeah. I didn't know that about the Bridge tour. I missed that when I was in school and couldn't get to that one. And a few that I had missed. I never saw River of Dreams. I don't know why I missed River of Dreams, but on River of Dreams, they had T-Bone, T-Bone Wolk, who had worked with Hall & Oates, and he has since passed. I've spoken with Mark Rivera about him. And he was just like, they were really tight. Yeah, Mark wrote a very nice thing on social media about 7-8 years ago. Wow. He's like, did you see my tribute to T-Bone? Mark's a really great guy. I hope you guys can get him. I've spoken with him a few times.
Yeah. He's what's that?
Incredibly energetic.
Oh, I'm sure. He just got, from the beginning, every video you see him in live from Long Island, he's big smile, a lot of great movement, Yeah, that'd be a good get. Yeah, he and Crystal did Rolling Stone interviews recently over the last couple of years that have been great.
Yeah,
and makes you want to really talk to them and keep digging. And that's what's great when you read a good interview like that, you're like, good, we can refer back to that. I can ask you all my questions now, because we can just make mention where you went through all these other things, and you take it to the next step, sort of, in questions, if you know where to look.
Yeah. I met Mark. I was doing a print article because I'd done a lot of freelance writing on the side, and that's where I met Mark and Liberty. It was the last days of them playing together. It was around, I think, 0506.
Okay.
And they did a thing called Camp Jam. And this was like a rock and roll fantasy camp. So if like guys like me, you're middle-aged and you want to hang out with your rock and roll heroes, you pay a nice little price to spend time with them for a weekend.
Yeah.
So I wrote about that, and it was organized by Jeff Carlisi of 38 Special. And Jeff has been here for years here in Atlanta. So he was able to get Mark and Liberty, Ed King from Lynyrd Skynyrd, I believe. Ricky Bird, who's the guitarist for Joan Jett. I've had him on my podcast here. And I went and covered it one night, and that's where I met them. And Mark was incredibly energetic. He goes and fetches me an Amstel Light. He's like really making me at home. He was like kind of taking charge of the whole thing. Really, really, really nice.
That's great. Yeah, I love stories like that. It's a good time. Yeah, I remember I interviewed. Do you remember Andrew WK from the early
Yeah,
2000s?
yeah.
I interviewed him. We took him around Manhattan and came up with this angle where he was the party guy. Every album was party, 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 and he had the picture with the bloody nose and the stringy hair. So I was like, okay, well, let's take him to the Museum of Modern Art and a jazz club and a poetry reading, and we'll do like a funny little fish out of water kind of thing. Well, sneaky, his father's a conceptual artist, so like nothing we're throwing at him fazed him one bit, and he's just schooling us on these pieces in the museum and this and that. So, but it was a really fun time. It was just a nice night sitting with somebody and kind of chilling.
Cool. So, what are you doing now? Are you still a journalist? What is your day gig?
Oh yeah, no, I do digital marketing now, so I do content writing, content direction, a little bit of SEO. So I've come off that. I was but yeah, back in like 2005, 2006, I started writing for a punk magazine, and then I parlayed that into like a freelance gig with a monthly digest outside of Philadelphia, and then I was editing community newspapers for a couple of years before I left journalism. So I got to sneak a lot of good interviews. I went to school at Temple.
Oh,
in
okay.
Philadelphia. Yeah.
Oh, Philly, totally Philly,
Yeah.
Philly background. That's awesome.
I started in Brooklyn, and once I got down here, I just laid down roots. That was it.
Yeah, I once interviewed John Oates. He was here about 4 years ago. So Hall & Oates was a huge in my life. Gosh, huge in Cleveland.
Were they really?
Yeah, they did very, very well. I mean, not like they were in Philly, but they loved them in Cleveland. Yeah, they always did well, just like Billy. Springsteen kind of became religion in Cleveland because, outside of Jersey and New York and that area, he was huge. Springsteen was massive in Cleveland, but we all loved Hall & Oates, that whole Philly soul thing.
Yeah. Yeah, Hall & Oates, I feel like, because I moved out of Brooklyn when I was 10, and, I was just all about Billy Joel at the time. So I do have a weird gauge of what other people were listening to, but I do feel like Hall & Oates wasn't nearly as big in New York as they were in Philadelphia. I'm sure like you could hear, What I Want, Private Eye on the radio somewhere, but like you got down here and like teachers were playing it, they would sneak it into your elementary school productions and stuff, that kind of thing.
Yeah, down here in Atlanta, it being the South, it's like almost nobody's from here, really. I'm one of those millions of people here, at least in the Atlanta metro. So it's a lot of people more from the eastern half of the country, eastern half after the Mississippi. So a lot of people did come down here, and that's why Billy does well here. If it wasn't for the dynamic here, you wouldn't see an artist like Billy doing as well. But there's so many transplants here, especially from New York and Ohio and places like that. So he could fill up in an arena for one night. I don't know if he did too back in 1990, but not since then. He could still do it because, there's so many New Yorkers here, people from Boston, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia.
And that occurs to me because I was in Atlanta for like 2 nights for a wedding a couple of years ago. And I remember just being near the CNN building. I guess, is there a lot of other industry there? Is it more than just CNN bringing everybody in?
Yeah, we got a lot of companies here. It's CNN's part of Warner Media now. It was basically the unit was Turner Broadcasting, and about 2 miles down the road on Techwood Drive, that's where you have Cartoon Network, TBS, TNT. They're in that building. We're going to be moving back into that building, and they're going to probably take down CNN Center in 2024.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of the plan. In Atlanta, they just tear down buildings. But Coca-Cola is a very big company here. Its origins are here. And a lot of others. NCR is pretty big here. Accenture, Invesco, a lot of companies here. Yeah, it's just growing. It's still growing. I've been here over 3 decades, and just by leaps and bounds, it's exploding.
Has it been like sudden shifts, or do you feel like it's been gradual, even if it's leaps and bounds?
Pretty much gradual the whole way. Certain eras, like in the 90s, all of a sudden after the Olympics, we had like a massive jump.
Right.
early 2000s at certain points. Like, yeah, there were certain years there where it was like, bam. I think we're going through that boom right now. There's a lot of new buildings coming up like crazy. So people are moving here in droves. I think we're going through a real boom right now.
Right. Yeah, my girlfriend's sister lives out right near Seattle, and the impression we get out there is like that. All of a sudden, everything just kind of plopped down with the tech companies, sort of thing. Where there was a big shift. And in Philadelphia, I feel like it was kind of gradual. It's accelerated over the past 10 years. You've seen like at least two neighborhoods offhand I can think of that you wouldn't bother going into, 10 years ago, maybe 8 or 7 years ago, that now are just bustling. It's interesting to see these shifts, over the past decade.
It is. Well, the people were enamored with Seattle back in the 90s with, obviously you remember Nirvana.
Yeah.
Those bands, Pearl Jam. I really, really enjoyed those bands, especially, it's harder edge, but they're really organized and melodic too. I love that amalgam between those two. I love Nirvana. I love Foo Fighters to this day.
Right. Yeah, going back and listening, I think In Utero is more satisfying, I think, than Nevermind in a lot of ways. For all the noise on that album, there are these cracks of really nice songcraft and melodicism that occur. I mean, Heart-Shaped Box is just
love that.
That's just, and then they throw Pennyroyal Tea right in the middle of it, and it's there's so much going on. I remember when that one came out. I think I was tapped into it at that point. That was like the one I got. Everybody knew what Nevermind was, and eventually you picked it up, sort of thing. It's funny when you listen to those first like Pearl Jam or Alice in Chains albums. In a way you can almost hear the old '80s hair band gear.
Yeah,
like you could almost imagine them trying to the drummers trying to pare down their old huge double bass kit and 20 toms because they were trying to be Warrant. And you wonder which ones were just going with the times and which ones were saying, this is great. I could finally do more music that I want to do. You really wonder who was organically into it and who grew to love it because that was where it went.
Yeah. Been a great time in music. I remember when Heart-Shaped Box came out, I was in the field a lot, so we would hear that in the news van quite a bit. So I don't miss those days of schlepping sound equipment. It was awful. I couldn't stand that. I like being an editor, but then again, I got to get up and move. That's why I got into running, because I got to move. I got to just get out and do things. Going back, and you guys mentioned on the show, and I mentioned it in an email. So in Billy's world, I've gotten to know a lot of people around him. So I met the wife. Which wife was it? Was it number 3? She was on a cookbook tour. She was the chef. Forgetting her name now. Yeah. Katie
Lee, I think, yeah.
She was really, really nice, but that was the whole thing. I think she was really, really into latching onto the name to promote herself. It really kind of felt that way, but she seemed very nice and sincere. I mean, very talented from what I saw.
Yeah.
So she came to the studio to promote her cookbook at that time. So Christy had a show. This was wife number 2.
Yeah.
She had a show on CNN. I could talk about this. This is now over 25 years ago. But I was what they would call, I mastered the show. I would work with a whole crew. We didn't have nonlinear editing at that time. This was 1992, I think. Right. So they decided, hey, let's bring in a big name. Let's try to do a big type of feature-y show talking about style, fashion, cooking, all that stuff. Hey, she's perfect, Yeah. She was already on VH1 trying to break into trying to host a show. So they brought her on. It was called Living in the 90s. And I would take the pieces parts and work with the whole crew, the sound guy. There was a director who would do all the switching, and I would master it to what was called a D2 tape. That was what programs were mastered on. It was digital tape.
Yeah.
All the pieces parts were on Betamax or Betacam. And
Lucky Land Casino, asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office. More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
I'd edit all that together. And that's just basically, it's kind of like mastering. It's kind of like, putting together a record, but with video. So I did that. It was one of the many shows I worked on at that time. And show lasted about 6 weeks. She was abruptly canceled. It was kind of weird how they told her. I think they told her on she was on a modeling shoot.
Wow. And just what, came in and handed her a note?
Yeah, I think so. Pretty much heard through her agent, hey, your gig's over there. So it was bad. I think she went on Regis and Kathy Lee at that time and complained. I remember rolling on that and giving a copy to the executives to watch at that time. None of those people are there. So if Christy, if you're listening, it's karma really does happen. All those people who gave you the heave ho back then.
Yeah.
It's rough. Billy did show up on one of the episodes, and I kept the tape, and I have it somewhere. I feel still funny about sharing that because I'm afraid it's going to get out there and embarrass them.
Oh, really? Because were they married at the time?
Yeah,
I'm trying
to. It was towards. You could tell it was kind of towards the end there. He kind of made a few quips "Oh, you're never around." It's water under the bridge. It was more than a quarter century ago, but still, I still feel funny about sharing certain things like that. But I was like, I got to keep this. I was a huge fan. I was like, oh my God. The minute I popped the beta tape and I'm looking at what? He's on, they recorded with him? Oh my God.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. They've certainly reconciled and seem to be on very good terms now. But you don't want to be the one that just makes this point of.
Yeah, I hate gossip and stuff like that. And, the whole thing, it's funny when I was in high school and they were dating and, the first show I saw him when I was in high school, I'd say, hey, I'm seeing Billy Joel, all these, I was high school guys are, oh my God, that girlfriend's so hot. I'm no, I'm there for the music and the concert. What's wrong with you? She's so hot.
So what am I going to do with this? She's not coming out. So,
but that's, and then later on he would joke about, things in concert. I think he did it at the face-to-face show, later on talking about that, but yeah, that's the whole thing. When you date a supermodel, it's then you become tabloid fodder. And I'm sure that didn't help.
Right. I feel like the same thing in a maybe small degree happened with Springsteen in the 80s, where he had sort of the jet-setting wife, so to speak, and and that coupled with Born in the USA, and he was this weird pop star thing that he never was before that.
Yeah, I didn't expect Born in the USA to get as big as it did, and I remember I was working in a drugstore. I did throughout high school, and the local station WMMS got a hold of the entire album and played it the day before it was released. And I was listening to it, I was like, this is typical Bruce, because I started to just learn about Bruce. I was working with a big Bruce fan. He was somewhat on my radar, that kind of thing. But he kept giving me updates through the whole time I was working there. He's going to have this new album out. He's going to have this new album out. I was like, oh, just shut up already. He kept bringing out Rolling Stone copies. Oh, he's getting farther on this album. Oh my gosh. And then when they released it, I was like, this is great. It's a really, really good album, but I didn't expect all the hits off of it. And I finally saw him in concert in '85 at the Cleveland Stadium, and it was totally packed. He was so at the top of his game. It was, he was beyond a superstar at that point.
Yeah. I mean, by the time I came online, Born in the USA was out. So it took me a long time to understand this concept of, he wasn't playing stadiums. Maybe even at Born to Run, he might have still been in theaters. I'm not quite sure, but this album was the one that shot up, and it was so funny because like Cover Me, I always thought was like an odd song. I like it, but it's like you couldn't really pigeonhole it. It's like got some sort of James Brown funk thing going on, but it's absolutely not a funk song. That sort of. I read a great book on him, and they were talking about how there was almost two albums. One was like the pop album, and one was the rockabilly album. So you get the vestiges of that, which is Working on the Highway, Pink Cadillac, which is the B-side, things like that. So if you listen, there are sort of two albums on there. But yeah, it's so funny I'm trying to think of a good analog now, and I can't think of one of someone that was like, really well known and then just goes straight 110% pop star.
Yeah. Yeah. I wasn't expecting it because I felt he was like not really so much underground, but he wasn't like huge. Felt more sacred to people in Cleveland too, because he spoke to the working guy back then, and which was huge over there. So wow, I couldn't believe how big that all got. He had a lot of B-sides around that point too. Almost every single I think had a B-side.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, his, the tracks box that's just all this stuff you never hear, that never made it on. Tracking his is really tough.
Yeah,
I saw him
on it. I remember is the B-side to Glory Days.
I don't even know that one. Yeah.
Stand on It. Yeah, I think I heard somewhere because Bruce Springsteen was always much looser with the set list. Totally opposite from Billy. Right. Totally mix it up. And I think a veteran threw his leg up on stage one time, and he says, "Guys, we're gonna play Stand on It." It's like, when did you guys ever rehearse that thing?
I saw him in 2009 and 2011, and I saw him do the Born to Run entire album. That was my first time seeing him. I'm so happy because Clarence was still with us. So I got my Clarence experience, and we were right behind the stage too. So we were pretty close. And 2011, I saw him at Citizens Bank again. And that was the big ballpark show, and this and that. And funny enough, I was working with somebody that was setting up. So I actually set up part of the field. My job, like from 11 p.m. to like 6 a.m. was locking in all those little pieces of plastic interlocks that you put the chairs on top of, And I made a point of like walking up to the stage and put my coffee on it and then taking it back off just to put my hand, So he comes out, and this is when Wrecking Ball, that album, had come out.
Yeah.
And I believe it was We Take Care of Our Own was a single off that, which was referencing Hurricane Katrina. So he comes out, it's right around Labor Day weekend, and he's like, "Oh, how are we all doing tonight?" And he does Sherry Darling, and he does like I forget a couple of couple like that, And he's like, "How you all doing? This is our summer," And I'm like, "Well, I guess he's going Vegas. I guess it's happening," And he does this 4 or 5 song block of like happy, summer songs and the glory days and all that, and then just lights go down. They come back up, and he's doing We Take Care of Our Own. And then it was like straight Bruce show after that. It was just like he got all the happy out of the way. He was soloing. He was taking all the solos.
Oh, cool.
He did Candy's Room. He did Jersey Girl. I think that's on record actually as his longest show. If not, it's one of his longest.
Jersey Girl. Wow.
Yeah. He brought everything out, man. It was an amazing. It was like when Rosalita is not the highlight. When it's Rosalita and 5 more songs after that, you're in for a good one.
Oh my gosh, yeah. He'll mix it up.
Yeah.
Billy's a lot tighter. Yeah, he doesn't talk as much as he used to. In Boston, he didn't say too much. It was boom, boom, boom. But I think in Boston is because they have a curfew. I was sitting there at Fenway, and it wasn't even dark yet. I was like, oh, maybe another half hour to the show. All of a sudden, I hear The Natural come on. I'm like, what? I'm glad I got here when I did.
Yeah. I didn't know they had to have a curfew. They're like, oh, the concert's got to be over by a certain time.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking that they have to do that because they're in a neighborhood. They probably have to do that at Wrigley, I would think, because I've never seen a show start really that early, somebody on his level.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a good point. Yeah.
I was
in Philly, it's in a complex. There's no neighbors you're gonna bother.
Right. Yeah. I was messaging some of our Boston friends from that Retold site. I was like, does he really come on this early? I guess there's no big deal to them.
Yeah, they're used to it.
Yeah, it was very, very odd. Your podcast is awesome. So you're now up to, let's see, 52, 53 as we speak, and it's going to be more by the time I release this.
See, where are we at? Yeah,
Yeah,
Edward now is
O'Downey.
52. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very
Yeah,
good.
it's been a lot of fun, getting into just the production end of the podcast world, and also just digging this deep into any artist, let alone one you love, is just fascinating. It's so enjoyable. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
and
then
you have a
meeting,
passion for it. Yeah.
yeah, thank you. And then meeting guys like you and others that we get to learn more about. I just love hearing even just your tales of working at CNN is something I've never
I got
a chance to
stories.
behind that curtain.
Yeah, it's funny. It's strange, bedfellas, and I've always, being on social media, doing all the freelance work I've done, I was like, this is such weird bedfellas because I'm working for a big corporation. I always kind of have to be careful what I'm saying. So my tell-all will come out way after I retire. No, it's been a great experience. I mean, I love being in news. It's been fantastic. I really enjoy storytelling. And most of all, I'm a video editor / producer. So I do more than just like video edits. And I've been getting more into doing really decent graphics, not like, I don't have time to do like involved animations, but I do graphics. A lot of my stuff's been on these DC based shows, if you watch in the afternoons. So a lot of that. I mean, I really enjoy it. Hope we just keep going on with that too. I really had a very, very good time. But doing the music pieces and acting as a producer has been really fun. That's been kind of changing. Hopefully, maybe I'll have more opportunities in the future to do those kind of features. Great. But I did a feature on a guy who makes cigar box guitars.
Okay.
And he's really, really talented. He's in a band, does his own stuff too as a musician. But these cigar box guitars have an awesome sound to them. Yeah. And my girlfriend, actually, it's funny, she tipped me off to do this package. We call these packages, it's a feature. He lives over here in Marietta, Georgia. And he met Ozzy Osbourne because he was on Ozzy and Jack's Great Adventures Detour, or whatever they called that show on A&E. So Ozzy came to his house. Oh, wow. And he jammed with Ozzy Osbourne there. So I was like, that's how I noticed him. I was like, this guy's in town. And that was my favorite package that I did. Yeah. It was so fun.
You're at the point, I guess, in your position, you get to choose a lot of these then. Like
when it comes to doing the music featurey things, that's my own initiative. I'm doing regular news. It's like I'm doing what the network wants me to do.
Yeah.
But to do these things on my own, I enjoy that.
That's what's fun. I remember even when I was, working at community papers, I would see who was coming to the theaters. I'd sneak in interview. I got to interview Liberty among other people, just because they were my favorites. And I'm like, well, they're coming to town. Good enough for me, So you must, to a point, feel that same way. Isn't it great when you have this opportunity because you have the platform for it, and you get to dig in and find out all this stuff. It's so much fun.
I love that. And well, that's how the podcast was born, because it's like there's so much change going on. Well, Airport Network shut down. So it's like, so this was kind of born out of me just doing straight interviews with some of these people. I've met a lot of PR people along the way. So that's how, if you go through my catalog of episodes, some of those are people who I found myself, or PR people offered up to me.
Right.
So that's how I have a lot of these people who are way off the radar on most people's, but they're so talented, and really trying to promote them. And it's been really hard with the pandemic. And that's why I've created this podcast.
Yeah, it was great. I was listening to, I got to pull up his name now. Guy Grogan, the last one you were doing.
Oh yeah.
That was a lot of fun.
Guy is from New Mexico. I found him on Facebook. I mean, they'll get more on my radar if they can promote themselves on Facebook. They'll pop up on my feeds. I'm like, oh, he looks really interesting.
Yeah.
Really talented people. It's just like, it's so hard to break into the business.
Oh, yeah. Well, now that there's no monoculture anymore, it's everybody's working in their own corner. I mean, I have so many records of people I've gotten into that I don't know another fan.
With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Of them,
Exactly.
It's kind of weird.
I know. I'd love going through this, your catalog of interviews. I would love to talk with Russell Javers. He sounds so nice, and talk with Russell Javers' son.
Yeah.
What a great guy.
That was a lot of fun. We actually, I made a point of asking him what his rig was, because of all the people, you can't figure out what amps, what guitars, some of these guys, you find all that information like that. He walked us through, the models and amps and the few effects he used and things like that, which was this fun little stuff that I like to geek out on, at least. But there's stories about, when he was a kid and meeting Liberty and Doug and then playing in high school and,
you got some good nuggets out of him.
Yeah.
Russell, and you did that when you guys have really good production. What's funny is I'm a video editor. I do After Effects. I do Adobe Premiere. This my podcast. I pretty much I just got to get it out there. I don't want to do more editing. It's I know you guys do editing. You put sound and sound effects and all that fun stuff, but it's I just don't have. I don't have the energy after a certain amount of time. It's just me.
Well, that's like working in a deli and eating cold cuts. You're just not going to do that.
I love doing this. I'm not really expecting so much to this is going to get a zillion hits and people are listening to me over in New Zealand. And, right. It's more a hobby, more fun. It helps me as a producer just to interview and meet people. And I really enjoy that, all of that.
Yeah, this is great. I was listening to, Evelyn Glennie, the percussionist?
Yeah.
She has a podcast. I started listening to that, and it's sort of the same format where there's no real content. She just goes in and starts talking to whomever, and that conversation just goes wherever. And I was listening to yours. I'm like, oh, this is great. This is that same kind of thing where I'll try to listen to some podcasts and I have to get on and off them. And I think we've been fortunate that I don't think we've had the same thing happen yet. But if I'm listening to a podcast about The Office, after 10 episodes, I got to get on something else. I can't stay on that. So podcasts like yours and Evelyn Glennie's are great because it's just a new adventure every episode. You don't know where it's going to go.
I don't totally stick with just music. It's just that I happen to, through my work and meeting the PR people, it just so happens that I've had a lot more music people on, but I've talked to some actors. I'm going to do another one this upcoming week. I love talking with people in theater, and then even beyond that, even things that have nothing to do with music. The next one I have coming out, which this is going to be dated, I'll probably release this in the spring. Somebody from New York Fashion Week and things like that. I just I don't want to totally just stick with one trick pony. I call it Tales from the Corners because I live in a place called Peachtree Corners, but it's not so much based on. I started it as a blog. Because I did a lot of writing, so I just kept the name. I had the same domain. I was like, no, just stick with that. Now I call it TFTC with my name. So nobody cares what that stands for. It's now I got to put my name on it, I guess.
How do you feel in terms of when you have to put a package together versus these freewheeling podcasts, which are pretty new when you think of it, like 10 years, 15 years ago, we didn't get these huge hour long or 45, however long people want to have a conversation. How is it going from, getting these concise packages on CNN versus just getting to sit down and let it hang out? What's that difference like?
Yeah, this is worlds different. There's so much freedom. That's the key word. It's there's so much freedom. I don't have to sit here and edit and listen for exact sound bites. Like when I did the package for Mike, I had to really chop up his interview.
Yeah.
I would really like go through and just like you have to chop things up to make sense. Then you have to kind of cover that with video because you don't want jump cuts.
Yeah.
So, that's a whole day. It's another layer, and it's a huge layer. And honestly, when I release something or I go to write a package, I have to have a copy editor go over it. And they not only check my grammar and my style, but they check my facts.
Right.
Make sure I got things right in there. So it's a whole different, it's just much more tedious to do a feature for television or even radio versus just doing these free form chats, and you just like let it go. People want to fast forward or just listen to the headphones while they're watching TV, that's fine too, or whatever.
Yeah, it is so interesting. I was telling someone, the challenge is the challenges happen on different sides versus print versus audio, because we do some editing. Is like if I wrote an article, we could jump topic to topic, and I could just go back and I can resequence it as I feel fit, and then just throw in a color quote as I'm summarizing. But when we get into that middle ground with glass houses, where like somebody jumps or we'll even jump a topic and go back to it, in the back of my head, I'm like, oh God, am I going to have to like start, jigsaw puzzling this thing back together, or am I just going to let it go as is,
So do you both edit your episodes, or do you take turns doing it?
We kind of have a production line. So we record together. I send my audio over to Michael. 2 times out of 10, he's like, you totally didn't use the right mic. Something happens and I have to go back and fix it. Which has gotten me really, he's really good with all the technical stuff. So he'll treat the audio, he'll equalize it, do whatever he has to, sends it back to me. I'll whittle it down so it's an episode, and then goes back to him, and then he'll master it. He'll throw on the sound clips, things like that. So when it comes to like sculpting the conversation, that's my part. And then he does the, all the social media. He makes the graphics. He makes the posts and things like that.
Yeah, that's nice to have a team effort. Yeah, you can tell the difference. This is really, really, it's very polished. It's a lot of production. I'm a lot more loose than that.
Yeah, way more time, I think, than either of us could have possibly considered. I mean, it's my girlfriend works, in the entertainment industry too, in the arts world, and so those weeks where she has to like work nights, 'cause she works for the ballet. So if they're having a show and she's the company manager, so she has to be there at night. I'm calling up Michael, like, we're recording now. I am editing this week because she's not coming home till 9-10 o'clock.
Oh wow. That's funny. When you get the downloads and you got people really listening, so that's kudos for all of that.
Yeah, it's really been amazing. I mean, people like you, we get your emails every couple of eepisodes, which is great. Just there's a couple of people like they keep popping in with these extra stories, and definitely adds more dimension to everything, and it keeps us going too. Like for the amount of work we put in, seeing those download numbers certainly help, but it's that communication that really makes it worth it when we get to talk to people.
Well, good. So you got a lot of other people on the radar. There's so many people connected to this, so that could just keep going on and on.
Oh yeah. We have a couple people. I don't want to get into anything just because I think I'll jinx it, but we have some more people lined up. We seem to go in spurts of interviews where just a whole bunch of people will come up at once, and then we'll get 5 or 6 interview episodes, and then we go back to reviewing a year or a bootleg, or coming up with like a concept, like episode, that kind of thing.
Yeah, the PR people are a big help in that regard. You said you knew somebody at Sony who was helping you, put you in touch with Edward. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah. Michael used to work for Sony, but I don't think that's how we ended up. I forget how. Yeah, somebody. Oh yeah, that was right. One of the people on the Retold page, who contributed some of his memorabilia to be used on the box set. So that was like some of the things you'll see were from fans, like the old ticket stubs and T-shirts and posters, things that they had. So he had contact with Sony. He passed the contact information to Michael, who, established that connection, and she put us in touch with Edward. So that was a process that was certainly fruitful,
Yeah. And then your Havana Jam episode, that really got me. I friended Ernesto Juan, who is a documentarian who covered Havana Jam.
Right. And what an example. I think we said this in the intro. We thought we were going to get this quick interview we were going to, because Ernesto has been trying to get the funding to make this documentary about this monumental landmark concert that happened, in communist Cuba at the end of the 70s, and nobody knows about it. Like we're sitting, I guess we're getting into Oscar season for what was Questlove's movie that I saw in the theater, and I can't think of it now.
Oh yeah. Got the name of that. Yeah, Questlove. Look that
one
up.
about the con.
But that looks interesting. Yeah, Questlove.
Oh, yeah, it was about the concerts in New York. Well, while you look that up, I'm gonna bounce this cat who's coming in.
That looks good. Yeah, I saw a preview. You know what? I went to see this documentary with my girlfriend called about Sparks. You know, that duo. Sparks.
Oh, there's a documentary about that place too.
And yeah, and Sparks. We're gonna actually go see them next month. But I think Summer of Soul was like previewed at that. Yeah, so Questlove's movie. That looks really good.
Yeah, it was great. And in the sort of lead up to Oscar season, we get to talk to this guy who's got the footage and has these amazing stories about this one concert in Havana that everybody forgot about, just got swept under the rug.
Yeah.
And the amount of insight he gave us to life in Cuba in the 60s and 70s just occurs to you. Like, you're a kid, you get a couple paragraphs in your history book, talking to somebody like that was amazing. It was such a unique experience to have.
That is so cool. That's so cool. Yeah, I was telling him, I was like, I don't know. I can't speak for CNN Films because that's like kind of separate. I don't know who even runs that, but like trying to make connections, I think that would be great for, to run on CNN on a Sunday night if you could get that done. I don't know what their requirements would be. If they make them recut the whole thing, who knows? But yeah, I was trying to tell him try to get a hold of some people. So hopefully that will see the light of day. That's really cool.
Yeah. A bunch of great stories, and I know we only cracked the surface with them. Scratch the surface with them.
That's so cool. So you met probably a lot of people on the Billy Joel completely retold fan page.
Yeah, I met a guy who lives in Philadelphia. We hang out a lot. We've now played together a bunch of times. That sort of thing, just from popping up on there. He saw the podcast and reached out to me. We're friends now, so that's been a lot of fun. One or two other people in Philly I've met up with as well. Yeah, it's been interesting to find an online community like that.
Yeah, it really is. And you kind of get to know people, even though you've never seen them in the flesh. It's like you kind of get their personalities. You see them constantly posting on there, and of course with their memories. Yeah,
well, back, there's the secret seat, so to speak, almost back behind the stage in Madison Square Garden. You'll find all the retold people. They all sit in that one section. Yeah, my friend that I made, Billy Handy, he was teasing me. He was sending me all these pictures, him with everybody. They all went out to dinner.
Yeah, that's really cool. Those are the nicer things about social media. But I think there've been some other groups where people are like, I don't know how you get into fights over like something like this. It's like, what is up with that? People
some people must be picking a fight constantly. It's just like, all right, you're having a bad day, just don't hit post. That's all. Come on. Didn't they always tell us write a letter and tear it up? Just hit delete, leave it in your Gmail draft. Come on.
Ridiculous. People take that stuff way too seriously. I remember on Liberty's fan page site, I think I posted, this was when the complete albums collection came out. I don't think Liberty was talking to Billy at that time. So I don't know if he was kind of being a little cynical or bitter. I said, hey, anybody interested in getting this whole, complete albums collection? It's all, 12 CDs, 13 CDs. Yeah. Anybody interested in that? And he made some kind of a cynical thing about it. And then somebody jumped on him and then he jumped back. He said, you think it was all so perfect? You sit there and buy into the image and the motorcycles and all that. He's like, I'm out of here. I'm like, oh my God. People are like, you're being so mean. If you post something, and some people do get that way, and then you see the back and forth. It's so ridiculous.
Well, yeah, I think the only bit of not backlash, but the only negative comments we ever got was when the Melissa and Teddy that do the songs from the Attic radio show up in New York. We had them on.
Melissa.
Yeah, and they're great. And Teddy comes on and makes a point. He's like, I gotta say it, I love Chuck Berge as a drummer. I've only seen Billy with Chuck. I think Chuck does a great job. I think if he wasn't that good, he wouldn't be there. So he's elevating the show. And somebody had to, how dare you? Who does he think he is? Chuck or Liberty and this and that. It's like, pal, what do you want? Like, we're not allowed to have somebody like not toe the line here. Like, I want to hear from the guy that like has that different perspective, that different genuine perspective, That's always, people start shutting those comments down once they get into the old band versus the new band.
Oh my God. Yeah. I think even the people who are the players, and you probably get a good gauge on this too. I mean, Liberty has buried the hatchet. He's like, life's too short. They seem to be okay. I think Russell seems to be okay. I mean, there were some harsh words thrown at him too.
Yeah.
Richie moved on years ago and started doing his own thing. So I don't think he has.
Yeah, Richie wasn't a part of that whole thing. He went of his own volition. So I mean, he was on that. He was on the Millennium concert. He spoke to him. He's like, that wasn't my experience with Billy. I left. He left before the nylon curtain. I mean, the thing about it is, I think it's a good balance. I think nobody plays drums like Liberty. He's not Bill Bruford. He's not Chester Thompson or any of these guys. But like when you try to play like him, you can't. I played Billy Joel songs. I can play them. I listen back. I'm like, it's too smooth. Doesn't sound like it. There's just something about the way he plays in the cracks and swings, and he's just like right at the edge of being off time on that 16th note, and you can't learn it. It's just something about how he heard it and it came through his arms is. So I'm so thankful we have that on record. But Chuck Berge is such a groover that these songs in concert now they just cruise at a very nice altitude.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is now. It's like all the hard feelings, and it's going to happen in music. I mean, look how the Beatles split, but eventually hatchets were buried after a while.
Right. Same with the E Street Band,
Exactly. It does. And, then people who say the stuff about Danny Korchmar, there's a whole controversy.
That's I don't even think that's controversy. I think just everybody thinks the same thing.
Like, should have been the Shelter Island sessions. Oh, what did Danny Korchmar do to that? Oh, he's like, it's like people think that Billy joined a Danny Korchmar cult or something like that.
Yeah, well, I'm blanking on the name now, which is horrible because it was one of my favorite interviews. We spoke to one of the engineers on the early albums who was brought in to do River of Dreams. Good. Yeah, oh my God, that was one of my favorites. Just talking, I want to talk to him every year. I can't believe I can't think of his name now, because I listen to him so much. I'm gonna find it.
He was good. Very interesting stuff there.
Bradshaw Lee, he was like, Billy kind of couldn't be corralled. Like he wanted to go fishing. He didn't want to make a record at that point. He needs somebody else in the room with directions. Just how it is,
Yeah.
And Danny Korchmar did it, And River of Dreams sounds so unlike anything that even came out that year. When Stormfront in '89 sounds like an album that came out in '89. River of Dreams was '93 or '94. Blues Traveler, Counting Crows, Spin Doctors, Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam, Nirvana. What else sounded like River of Dreams? Absolutely nothing.
No,
for better or worse, it's a unique sounding album. And I think for better in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I wish it wasn't a swan song. And I didn't even see that coming. Like he was going to totally get out of pop music. But that was kind of unexpected. I was expecting a whole lot more going forward. But, it is what it is. These many years later, it's like, he can do whatever he wants, really.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Well, hey, I was talking about Springsteen before. I can't remember the last time I was excited for a Springsteen album. I'll go see him again in concert. But I'm glad that we got this nice little package, with a nice narrative arc to Billy's albums that you can make and enjoy. And it cuts off right there, and it's great, You don't have to worry about it.
Pressure to go get the newest album and try to learn all of the new songs.
Yeah. Why? Elvis Costello came through recently, and I was like, I don't want to go. I feel like I have to cram. I got, I just haven't, and I think I've heard they're really good. I just haven't bought a new Elvis Costello album since Momo Fuku in 07, 08. Just didn't have time after that. I have 12, 13 years, right? I got 12, 13 years of albums to try to catch up on. I'm not going to be able to do that.
I have a cat that comes in here too. She lives next door, and she comes in here and is, I work from my table here. I worked 2 weeks through the pandemic. I've been working 2 weeks from home and 2 weeks down at the center. And so she comes in here and will lie on the table, sniff everything out.
Yeah.
She likes to drink coffee.
Oh, does she really?
Like sniffing everything out.
This guy, I had the door closed to the third floor, and I think somebody came by and opened it, so he came flying up. He's not allowed on meetings anymore. He participates too much. Yeah.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
You got a great set of shows here. The concert classic in Houston. I was doing the same thing, asking the same amount of questions, like, why did they do a concert in Houston in 79? I mean, he was like, okay, he was crafting glass houses at that time. It wasn't totally complete. What was up with this one-off concert? I loved all the questions you were asking about that.
Yeah, I think the most we found out was like, I think they shot it to they knew they were going to video it, so they kind of got for that. I think he was like kind of workshopping a little, but it's a weird concert. It's good, but it's so funny when you start trying to put this stuff into perspective. And the funniest thing about it was hearing David Brown play like a random guitar solo.
Yeah.
Like I've played in enough bands where like I have a running joke now. If I'm playing in a band that's like making an album, I'm like, if I have any say in the production, any guitarist has to like submit a 3-page proposal as to why they need to play a guitar solo. Like, do we really need a guitar solo, or are you just playing a guitar solo because that's what we grew up on, And in that concert, David Brown was just playing guitar solos, and then clearly in the studio he crafted it. He crafted these pieces, and it was funny to see because you never hear a wanky guitar solo at a Billy Joel concert.
Yeah,
even when they're riffing on what's on the album, they stay pretty close to the theme. So that was really fun to hear a couple months before they finalized everything. It must have been, okay, this is where David Brown's guitar solo is going to go, and he's just going off the cuff.
Yeah, the most you see now, like Tommy Burns, pretty much takes over Allentown and gets his intro after that. It's just you don't see much. Tommy's an interesting guy. Met him, and just very, very jovial, very interesting. And he was involved in the Moving Out production,
right?
The Twyla Tharp. I interviewed Darren Holden, who did a leg of that. There was Michael Cavanaugh, who you guys spoke with from Cleveland. Darren was on the leg that played here in Atlanta back in, I'm losing the year, they were like 06 or 07 or something like that. And that was a lot of fun. But Tommy was involved with that. And
Tommy's he was with the Stray Cats too for a while. Yeah. I want to get Tommy just because the amount of stories he's got to have with these different bands and putting this stuff together is, gotta be fascinating.
Yeah. What a good crew. What a good crew. Hopefully he'll continue. And now, have you seen Billy at MSG yet? Have you gone?
I haven't. No, I haven't. It's on my list for this year at some point, if I can remember to go get tickets at any given moment.
If I happen to be up in New York, I mean, I'd love to time it that way too. I was amazed I was able to time it with Boston and all that. Because I didn't, we're still in the age of COVID, so are these shows going to go forward? Maybe they will. So so it's really interesting on the Retold page. People who go to MSG, there's one guy who I think he records most of the show. Or at least gives the set list out, which is there's a couple of them you can rely on them to get the clips. I remember when that was right around the box set opening we did with the video, and I was up teaching myself Adobe Premiere, like reteaching myself after 20 years how to do it. Wow. And as the concert's going on, I am like bleary-eyed, like trying to make these jump cuts and smash cuts and put my picture in the bottom. And then I go on Facebook and everybody's posting videos of the concert. I'm like, you guys, like, quiet. Awesome. Well, I really had a great time speaking with you. This is awesome.
You too. Thanks so much for having me, Robert. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I look forward to many more episodes. It's glasshousesPod.com. You're also on everywhere, probably Apple Podcasts.
Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher. If wherever you get a podcast, we should be on it. And then we're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just look up Glass Houses Billy Joel Podcast. You'll find us there.
Yeah, I've been listening to you on Podbean. I don't know how. stumbled on you that way.
Yeah, that's like home base. That's what we, the website is like a Podbean.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Mine's Spreaker. I've been using Spreaker. Somehow I stumbled into Spreaker because my neighbor was using it.
Yeah.
But I've been on all those as well, all those outlets. So yeah, really, really cool. Yeah. I really look forward to the next episode.
Thanks.
So you average an episode, every 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
Yeah, every 2 weeks they come out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good space. This way they know you're still there.
Right, exactly. Yeah, we're not killing each other. And it's not overkill on one artist either, I think it's just enough to keep people, hopefully, is the right schedule to keep people interested without oversaturation.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, excellent. Well, thank you for your time.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. Great to finally speak with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll keep the emails going. I love it. Every time I'm listening to an episode, it's like, it just triggers something. It's like, oh yeah, I remember this. I remember, when this album came out, totally. It's so funny because like you're online and there's people who are very young and they were like, do you remember when a new album was coming out? I'm like, you're making me feel so old. It's ridiculous. But my oldest sister got me into him, and she's about 7 years older than me. So she's 62 this year. So she saw Billy. Now she could have, I don't know how much she would even talk about it or remember as much, but she saw Billy when she first went to college, which was at the University of Toledo in the fall of 1978. So now here I am acting like you guys. I'm like, so was The Strangers been out for a while? Was anything from 52nd Street being premiered at that point? Because I know 52nd Street was released around October 78. What day did you see him?
Yeah, it's funny when you go back and you start putting things in different contexts other than this is when I saw him,
But it's interesting to hear from somebody older, and then she's, from the generation before me. And so I was like, what's the set list? Did you know the set list? You know what songs he played? I don't know if she could tell me all that, but I bet he played stuff like during that time from Streetlight Serenade. I love to hear all that stuff live.
Yeah, when Weekend Song and Weekly Rag were still in the set regularly.
Yeah, exactly. And all we got is, clips on YouTube and all these bootlegs and all that.
Yeah, and now Great American Music Hall, at least with a couple of these like old closers, stuff.
Very, like very nice sounding stuff. Yeah, and his take on New York State of Mind when he was premiering that and working on it. That just, it sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Really does. Yeah. Well, I really enjoyed it. Take care, and best wishes for your podcast.
Thanks. Same to yours.
Take care. Have a good one. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Wells Fargo presents one of the surest ways to grow your money. A Wells Fargo CD account, where you can earn a 5.00% annual percentage yield on an 11-month term with a minimum opening deposit of $5,000. Visit a Wells Fargo branch or wellsfargo.com/CD rates to open a CD account and start growing your savings with us.
Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.